Hey everyone, and welcome to my last live for this summer shawl-along. And I so appreciate you guys joining me for this. And today we're going to talk about finishing up the edging and then blocking. So as always, and I'm kind of keeping an eye over there to see what's going on. So let's see if anybody is saying hi yet. Hopefully this will be okay today because my internet, as usual, has decided every time that I do this to get a little squirrely. So, okay, so I finished my little mini shawl and I wanted to talk a little bit about the edging first. Um, so let me switch over here and you can see what I'm looking at down here. Um, Okay, so I had a question today about this little lump here when you're doing the edging. And this is totally normal. The really cool thing about lace is that it's incredibly forgiving. So when we block this out, we're going to block it straight out so that the whole top is straight, and then it's going to hold there. So the other thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is if you may not be at this point yet, but this is what it looks like when you first turn that corner around the bottom edge there of the pointed triangle. So it's really lumpy, and that is totally normal. And don't feel weird about it because that happens every time. There are some extra stitches that I put in here, some extra body stitches. And when this is blocked out, it will like be really nice and it will go around the corner beautifully and you'll experience the magic of blocking. So, hey everybody, from Pasadena, Ontario, Ohio. This is awesome. So cool to see you all. Okay. So you can see on the other edge here, there's another little lump. And so what we have, um, let me get this in here so you can see this. So it's right now, it does not look like a triangle. So it looks more like, just a little pathetic thing because it's not blocked yet. And then we have this little lump on the bottom here. So this is going to be the magic of blocking. Okay, so here is where I am. And I have the 4 and the 5 here because if you have any questions about the rest of the edging, please feel free to ask. So Corinne said, I discovered 3 extra stitches at the bottom point and I'm not sure what to do about them. So at the bottom point, there are actually 3 extra stitches. So I had you all knit 3 stitches into that 1 stitch at the bottom point. So hopefully that's what you're talking about. But let me know, Corinne, if that's not what you're talking about, let me know. But that is totally fine. One way to get around that type of thing is to make sure when you're starting to do your edging to block it off in bits, groups of 12 stitches so that you don't come up with some extra stitches somewhere in there. And then you can, before you start doing your edging, you'll be able to tell if something is off and then you can compensate for it. But in general, I think you'll probably be okay. So I'm just going to kind of keep an eye here and make sure Corinne's okay. So the pattern 1. So does that mean, Corinne, are you okay? Did I answer your question? I just want to make sure. Um, okay, so let me talk a little bit about the instruction here. So I have in the instructions, the first thing to do is to adjust the cast on loop to blend with the pickup around the lower around the inner triangle. So what I'm talking about here is you have this nice kind of lacy area here around the inner triangle. And then this can look kind of like a bit of a mess here. So what I'm talking about here is just adjusting your tail here. And that is going to happen before any type of washing or blocking because we don't want this to come out. So I'm actually going to finally take out my little pin here. And um, Corrine says, okay, the pattern at the point won't be centered unless I don't decrease them or unless you decrease them. Okay, so, and then Jennifer says, does the point require hitting a certain point in the 24 row edging chart? Yes. So this is centered here. So you can see this is the point right here, and then it's going to be centered right above these triangle or these diamonds. Okay, so, but it doesn't quite look like that on the chart. So let's take a look at that first, right before, um, right before we get to that. So the chart is a little bit off. So what I'm saying is because we have 2 stitches left up on that, on the finishing edge, and we started only with 1 stitch on the bottom edge, the chart is adjusted so that it will be centered right above the point here so that you'll get these, this triangle and this little diamond centered. So when you get to the point, you're going to be sort of in this area right here. And so Corrine says the pattern of the point won't be centered unless I don't. And okay, I meant if I don't delete them, the pattern point won't be centered correctly. Okay. Um, so Corrine, my question for you is, did you have the correct number of stitches when you started? So, and did you mark it off in sets of 12? If you could just let me know. And then if I'm not able to answer your question, definitely come on over to my Ravelry group if you're able to access it, or you can email me and we'll figure out what's going on. So if you could take a picture of it and send it to me, that would probably be the easiest thing for me to help you with that. So, and then let's see, everybody's okay. Okay, just checking. Alrighty, so if you take a look here, there's a yarn over right here at this beginning point, and that yarn over, to center this pattern correctly, that yarn over is going to, that yarn over here would be this yarn over here. So the pattern is centered correctly. And then in this little area, right in this area here, it's not actually going to look that centered when you're working the chart and you get there and you're going to think, oh, this looks a little bit off. So that's why I'm a little concerned that possibly something is going on, like you maybe, I think you maybe have the pattern right, Corrine, but then it's just, it looks confusing when you get there. So do take a picture and send it to me, and then let's see what we can do about it. So, okay. Any other questions? Okay, here we go. Back to the adjusting the cast on loop. So I took out my pin right here, and you can see, let me get this a little bit closer so you can see this. So you can see right here, this was the cast on loop right at this area. So I think I want to make that a little bit bigger so it fits in. better with the surrounding area, so I'm just gonna kind of like try to widen it out a little bit. Okay, so that's looking better to me. It's not going to look exactly like the rest of it because it's a little bit different right here, but I do want to make sure that that eyelet is about the same size as the other eyelets. And I want to make sure that I have my cast on tail woven in before I block it so it doesn't come out. So I think that's looking good right there. And I'm going to grab a needle. I'm going to turn this over. So one of the things about blocking a shawl is that you do not want to weave in or sew in all of the ends before you block it, because you may end up with the ends sewn in too tight. So I'm going to be a little careful here. I definitely don't want to make this look super obvious. So I'm going to sew it into the middle of this strand of yarn. And I'm just going straight through the middle. So the idea is just so that you can't really tell that it's more than one strand of yarn. And then I'm going to go up and you kind of follow that up into the solid area here and sew it in. So now that I have it kind of sewn in right there, I'm just going to put it through there one more time, and then I'm going to let that just sort of hang there when I block it, just to make sure that I didn't sew it in too tight. And I want to make sure that if it is a little bit too tight, I can still stretch it out a lot while I'm blocking it. And let me see. Okay. So here's what we have so far at the bottom, and I'm really liking that. So because I am a little bit accident prone with liquids, I am not going to put it in like my bowl of wool wash. But what I am going to do, I actually have a spray bottle and a towel here. And hopefully, I'm just going to spray it down a little bit. And then I have a steamer right around here. So hopefully, like between the two of these, it will be wet enough to be able to block it out. So if I were actually really blocking this out, I would fully submerge my shawl and I would put it in wool wash and make sure that it was completely like wet all the way through. And after making sure that it was wet all the way through, I would rinse out my wool wash completely and totally. So, so this is actually working pretty well. So this is just by spraying it. So you can see this is kind of relaxing it a little bit. And I'm losing some of that hump that I have up at the top there. So I'm just going to back out a little bit. Okay, so I've already lost part of that hump that's sort of up at the top there, which makes me very happy. So I don't think I'm going to need to use my steamer. I'm just going to, so usually when I take my shawl out, I try to get as much water out as possible. And again, I cannot show you what I generally do, which is to roll it up into a towel and walk on it. And that pretty much gets most of the water out. So when I lay it out and block it out, this is just damp. This is about how damp it usually is when I'm about to pin it out. Okay, so Jeannie asked, what about the bamboo? Is it the same? I block the bamboo the same. Jennifer, who dyed the bamboo, says that a steam block is fine too. So it's knitter's choice. Um, she's the dyer, she knows. I did actually fully submerge it, so it works that way too, and I really liked the way it came out. So I'd be happy with it either way. Okay, so I am going to remove the towel and put some blocking mats out. Okay, so these are just plain blocking mats that these particular ones are from Knit Picks. And you can get any type of floor tile or workout room tile or anything like that. So I also have my blocking um, wires right here, and these are actually TIG welding rod. That's TIG, TIG welding rod, and it is stainless steel. And I got these at Ace Hardware, and I cut them in half. So these didn't fit in my suitcase to begin with. So when I was traveling around and teaching classes, I had to cut them in half to take them with me. So now they're the perfect size for blocking with this camera. And then I have my T-pins. So these are nickel T-pins. So you can get stainless or nickel T-pins. Some of the stainless T-pins, however, are not quite as high quality as you might want. The TIG welding rod is actually 100% stainless. So there are no little tiny like pits or anything in the stainless coating that could rust or could turn your naturally dyed yarns any different colors. So let me grab one of my little um, welding rods here. And then Jennifer says, for those of you working in bamboo, you only need to spray and steam or just steam. So I like making sure that my lace is really super stretched out. So knitter's choice again, whatever you would like to do with your knitting, it's yours. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is remember that little tube we created up here at the top. So I'm going to take my blocking wire and I'm going to stick it in through the tube. This is my favorite part about blocking with this type of bind off because it's so easy. You don't have to weave it in and out. You just stick it right through the center of the tube. So, and you can see on this side, it's totally encased in that tube. So sometimes your blocking wire is not going to be long enough for the entire tube. I think I may run into that issue here, but we'll see. I think it's about right. So what you have here is a really nice straight edge because that wire goes all the way through the tube. Okay, so you look over here to the side, you can see you're either going to have to weave one of the wires in and out, and I can show you what that looks like, but I'm going to do something a little bit different. So if you want to create a flat edge and you don't have the tube along here, what you're just going to do is weave in and out. So I'm basically wherever, because I'm going to stretch this really tight, wherever this wire is woven in and out, you're going to find that it creates a little bit of a dimple or a scallop when you block it. So what I'm trying to do right here is make sure that this whole edge is really nice and straight. So that's one way to do it, by weaving in and out. Another way that I really like, I have these really cool little knit blockers. So some of you may have seen these before. These are from Knitter's Pride, and they look like little combs. So this is what it looks like. And I often will just put this through the edge, and then I'll just pin that down. So we have that through the edge, and I'm going to put another one through there as well. Okay. So now I have that top part here down. I'm just going to put a pin there. Okay. So along the edge here, we want these to be scalloped. So I am going to take a blocking wire and I'm going to run it in and out of the scallops along the edge. So this is just going to go in and out along here, right along the edge. Okay. So now when I finish this, I will actually put some pictures up of what it looks like when it's blocked, because it's really hard to see the whole thing right now. Okay, so now that I have those woven in and out, I'm just going to show you up close this one part. So generally before I do anything at all, before I start pinning anything out at all, I will weave my blocking wires in and out where they need to go in and out. Okay, so now I'm just going to pull. So you may find when you're blocking that things don't look quite right. So this may take a little bit of adjusting, which makes this method so much easier to use because you're able to move the wires around to pull the pattern out. So generally what I do is I work on both sides at the same time. So right now, because there's a little bit of a dearth of space here, I'm not working on both sides at the same time. I'm just showing you this one side. And let me show you the bottom. Okay. So here is that bottom point we were talking about before. Okay. So I want to make sure that the bottom is nice and stretched out so it goes around the point beautifully. Okay. So what I've done is you can see here that I've just continued along the edge here, and I have my wires right through each of those scallops. So I always check the point to make sure. So here's my point. I'm just going to go straight down from the point. So here's my center point right there. Here is the center point of my shawl. This right here is the center point. So that is one side. And then I always have that on another wire. Okay. Okay, so this is my point right there. That's the center So when I pin this out, I want to make sure that it's nice and pulled really tight. Okay, I'm just going to pull this tight, and then I'm going to show you what it looks like up top here where the bottom point of the shawl is. Okay, so let's take a look up here. So you can see that it's getting stretched out in this area. So it's maybe on mine not quite stretched out enough. I'm going to kind of spray it down a little bit more. So if any of you have ever spun, just made your own yarn on a spinning wheel or drop spindle or anything like that, you will probably have set your yarn before, and that involves like some nice steam. Well, steam is always hot, obviously. And that sets the yarn into its position and relaxes it into its twist. And blocking does pretty much the same thing. So what you're doing is making your pattern here just relax into what it's knit up into. So it used to be straight, and now it's just getting used to being a beautiful lace creation. So blocking actually makes a huge difference for lace, a much, much bigger difference for lace than it does for, I think, any other type of project because there's so much negative space. So right here, you can see right at that corner there, there's some extra fabric right in here, and that's fine. That makes the lace around the bottom look more organic. So you can see how it makes the pattern kind of look more organic as it stretches out. And again, up at the top, I had my lace right across the top up here. I have that straight up across the top. So this is going to block straight, right straight across the top like this. And then the bottom part is going to have a beautiful, look organic, pretty lace around the bottom here. Okay, just making sure nobody has any questions. Okay, so I am going to grab my shawl here, my finished shawl. So this one is, as we were talking about before, bamboo. The finished shawl is bamboo. And you can see how it looks here with this. This is garter stitch here, and you see how much that stretches out. And so it stretches out straight across here, across the top. And right up at the top, there's going to be a little bit of stretching in the pattern here. So I stretched it that way because I like the way it looks across the top. Though some people do actually block it with a point here, I like to go for a straight across the top triangle. So I blocked it straight. Some people do actually block it like this so that the pattern in this area is always like it's not misformed in any way, but this is a little bit stretched across the top there. Okay, let me show you the bottom and try not to get everything caught on the pins, which is difficult. Okay, so here is the bottom, and you can see across here that it's really nice and lays beautifully flat across the bottom. So let me move this a little bit. Okay, so you can see this. So Kathy says, do you have any tips for weaving in ends? Yes, I do. I do. And I'm going to show you those in just a sec. Let me unpin this actually, and I'm going to show you how I weave in ends. And this is actually how I do it on any of my shawls in any yarn. I don't actually weave them in, I more sew them in. And I find that that works really well. So let me undo this. And I left all my ends so you guys can see me sew them in. So I sew all of my ends in after blocking, as I was talking about before, and that is so that I can make sure that they won't be too tight to block out. So here I go. I'm just gonna fix this. I'm just gonna pretend that I took it outside here in the high desert summer and it's all dry. So now I get to weave in the ends. Okay. Move my stuff around. There we go. Alrighty. So I'm just going to pretend this is nice and dry. And part of it actually is dry. It's still sort of dry in here, even though it's not outside in the sun. Okay. So what I like to do when I'm weaving in ends is let me use the green because I think it's easier for you to see. I split the plies. So my first thing I'm going to do is this is 4-ply, and I'm just going to split this. So I like to split the plies and actually sew in my ends so they don't come out. This is a super wash, and same as far as I'm concerned with bamboo or some type of slippery yarn. So you don't want your ends coming apart and coming out and stuff starting to unravel. So the first thing is split the plies. So now I have 2 plies in each of the strands. So I'm going to use a sharp pin, or sorry, a sharp needle. It's just a normal sharp tapestry needle. Let me just thread this. Okay, so what I like to do is sew things away from each other. So this one is going to get sewn in along here, and this one is going to get sewn in through the back here. So I don't want to do this too tight. I'm going to go straight through the center of the yarn. So I want to hide that. I'm doing this a little bit loosely. So what I like to do is find one strand of yarn and just follow along that strand of yarn so that it binds as little as possible. I'm going to go through. So this works really well for a nice sport weight or fingering weight, and it also works really well for lace weight. So just because I was thinking about this the other day, I used some bulky yarn, and it was a non-superwash bulky single, and I actually needle felted in the ends. So there are different ways depending on what type of yarn you're using. You'll find that different things work better. So I'm just sort of following this right around. And I'm trying not to get any other yarn strands. I'm trying just to follow this one yarn strand around. So when I get to a point where I'm fairly happy with it being in there, I'm going to start backing it up a little bit. So I'm going to go back the way I came. So what I did was just grab a strand right there I didn't go exactly back the way I came, but now I'm just retracing it. So what I'm trying to do is make sure that the superwash does not come out. And this is a superwash yarn. So now I'm going to, this is basically what you would do if you were hand sewing, or what I do when I'm hand sewing a hem or something like that. So I just made a little slip knot, and now I'm gonna put my yarn, my needle right back through where I went before. So now I have one of my strands all sewn in. Let me grab my scissors. So the best part of this is cutting off the little strands. It does take extra time because you want to get those ends sewn in really well. So, okay, so now I have that one sewn in, and you can see on this side, it's not very obvious where it is unless you really look. That side's okay too. Just want to make sure to have a low impact when I'm doing this. Okay, so now I have my other strand, and since I followed this one yarn strand here along, I'm going to find a different yarn strand to go through so I don't make it too obviously bulky. So I realize this takes extra time um, that you may not want to take, and I totally understand that, but it does stay in so much better. And since we all use lots of superwash yarns these days, it's not going to felt in like it might have with like a Shetland wool or something like that, where it's really feltable and it felts from wearing. So after a while, you're going to find that if you don't sew it in like this, pieces of it will start to sort of come out. And you don't want that to happen. So I always feel like it's a pain, but I think it's time well spent. So I do actually even do this with feltable wools. Um, I like I like the idea, like the philosophy of weaving it in to look like you're knitting, but I've never been able to actually weave it in without it being obvious where it is. So I started splitting the plies because I just want it to disappear into the knitting so I can't see it. So this works really well for lightweight yarns as well, like a lace weight yarn. And that is where I actually started doing it because the yarn is so thin that even two full thicknesses of yarn make a really unsightly knot in it. And once you block it out and you open up that lace, it's easier to see where there's a kind of a knot. Okay, so now I'm just going to kind of go back the other way. So hopefully this will not start coming out, but even if it does, it shouldn't get past that knot that I put in it. And I feel okay about putting a knot in there because this is not a full thickness of yarn. So another thing you might use this type of method for of splitting the plies is if you're sewing on a button with a worsted weight yarn or something like that, and it's too thick to go through your button, you can actually split plies and use half of your yarn plies to do the button. Okay, just thought I'd toss that out there. All right, so that is one end woven in. And you can see here, it doesn't look very obvious. So now back to that point here, remember where I left my tail here? I am actually, like once I had that tail up here, so I didn't split the ply down at the bottom because I wanted it to look like it was an actual stitch rather than just the cast on loop. So I wanted it to look like all the other strands of yarn around here. But now once that I have it, it's all kind of adjusted and I like the size of that eyelet, I am now going to actually split this, and then when I sew in the ends, I'm going to do exactly what I did right up at the edges. I'm not going to do it right now because I'm actually going to, I'm going to block this out better. But I mean, it's still, even with the little bit of spraying I did, you can see how that lump right there is looking much better. And I will actually, I'll post a picture of what it looks like when it's all spread out and blocked. I'll put it on my Instagram, and I'll also come over to my Ravelry group and just post a picture of what it looks like with this whole thing blocked out. And you'll be able to see how I pulled it out. So let me see if anyone has any questions. Let's see. Um, wow. So there we go. I think that I have covered everything. Um, but if you have any questions, please ask me in the chat. And I'm a little bit delayed. So it's about 20 seconds between your asking me the question in chat and me being able to see it. So I'm just going to kind of watch and make sure that I haven't forgotten to say anything. So um, again, up here, remember I was talking about how there's a little lump over here. That's the unblocked side. So I didn't get to get this all dry over on this side here, but this side is actually less of a lump because I did block it a little bit. So one of the cool things about garter stitch is it just opens up so much when you block it because there you have that extra scrunchiness in there before blocking. So let's see. Just looking to make sure that I got everybody's questions. Let me talk a little bit about blocking materials. So I'm just going to kind of talk to you more. Um, okay, so let's see. Okay, so blocking materials. I talked a little bit about how you want to make sure that you don't get pitted stainless steel or something like that. And I know some of you probably knit with naturally dyed yarns, and I knit a lot with them as well. So I had a little mishap one time with blocking wires, and they were not the TIG welding rod that I actually use now. They were a different type of like just a stainless steel coated wire, and there were some imperfections in the coating, and so it actually kept the dye process going. So like basically restarted the process. So I was blocking something that was gold, and I had little tiny um, like pinpricks of dark blue where the blocking wires and the pins had touched because it was a naturally dyed yarn, and iron is a mordant, and so it made the process continue. And instead of having just a completely gold, I had these little bits of color. And I was kind of okay with it, but I have actually seen it happen with people where it's worse. The longer that it stays on your yarn, the worse that it is. And luckily for me, it dried really fast, so it didn't actually leave that bad of a, like a dye job, but I've seen it where it doesn't look great. So if you're unable to get really good quality stuff, and I don't mean by that, I don't mean like super expensive or anything like that, because I paid like $20 for my TIG welding rod, which I think is about the same price as you would get for like a blocking set, or maybe even a little bit less. So it's the actual like the quality and really not the price. You can get some really good blocking materials for a pretty low price. So one way to figure out if you have a good set is to kind of test it out a little bit on the yarn ahead of time. And I did actually test a bunch of them out before. So I for T-pins, I go for like the nickel at this point instead of stainless steel because the nickel seems to be um, like more neutral and it doesn't really make it keep dyeing any type of naturally dyed yarns. So again, this is for naturally dyed yarns and it is not for like commercial acid dyes or something like that. Those are much more, I guess, stable, you could say. It's not as much of a natural process. So when you get a natural product and a natural process, there are always going to be little differences and you just have to kind of watch out a little bit more. So let's see, any more questions? Um, so Raylene asked me what gauge TIG wire. So, um, I would say that this looks like it's about a 12 gauge to me. It could be a little bit, it's 12 or 14 could be in the middle of it. Um, Unfortunately, the wrapper it came in is long gone, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it's around like it's like a 12 or a 14 gauge. So it was whatever Ace had that particular day. So there, it's not very bendable. There are actually flexible blocking wires as well, and those those are awesome. So you don't need them for this shawl, but they're great for like a semicircle or a circle shawl. And let's see, other questions. Let me see. So please post a picture with blocking wires and pins in the photo. Yes, I will absolutely do that. And oh, thank you. Donnie says iron is a saddener of naturally dyed colors. It turns them darker. Yes, that is exactly what happened. I had my gold turned into dark blue, and I had a pink turn into dark purple. So I actually thought it was kind of a cool look to it, but yeah, it's you don't want that to happen without your wanting it to happen in the first place. So let's see. Other questions. So the length of my TIG welding rod, let me see. So that's about a foot, 18. I think they're about 36 inches long. No, they're more like 32 inches long, I think. They just came in a tube. Um, I didn't really see much of like a different lengths in there, but it doesn't really matter because whatever length they are, you can use lots of different ones along the side and just make sure that you pin them out so that you don't get extra little scallops here and there. So you're good, whatever. Let's see. Just looking for other questions here to make sure I have everything. Um, okay. Another thing that you can do actually, if you are concerned about saddening your naturally dyed yarn, is you can actually use like a plastic clip or something and clip the little points of your scallops to a needle. or you can use something like a Shetland shawl blocking frame. So what they used to do was lash the shawl to the frame. So basically they'd have this square frame or triangular frame, and they would run thread in and out. So they're running it right through a scallop point and then around the frame, and that works very well as well. So in case you don't want metal to touch your shawl, that would work really well. Okay, so any other questions? Just want to make sure. Um, so one other thing about weaving ends in on a slippery yarn is sometimes the yarn is just so slippery that there is nothing you can do, even when you split the plies and sew it in. So I have been known now and again to get sewing thread and just a needle, and I just sew down the ends of the really slippery yarn, and that works really well. So just make sure that you match the color of your sewing thread to your slippery yarn. And that works well. So let me see other questions. Okay, so Valerie says, how do you steam block? Is it just with the steam setting on an iron? So I have a giant blocker, sorry, a steamer. Hang on. It's sitting here. You probably aren't going to be able to see the whole thing, but like here is my steamer. And I love this thing. I got it on Amazon. It was a pretty good deal. And it has a like a little nozzle on the end and a hose and everything. So I had it around in case I needed to steam everything, but I didn't end up having to. It works really well. You could use you could use a steam iron, or you could use a tea kettle as well. I've held stuff just over a tea kettle or a pot of boiling water to steam it, and that works too. So let's see, other questions. Um, I think I've gotten everyone's questions. It looking good. Okay, so thank you so much for joining me in this knit along. And in case I did not answer your question, definitely just shoot me an email or come on over to my Ravelry group if you're able to, or yeah, just say, hey, you didn't go over this and I need a little bit of help, and I'll help you out. And it has been such a pleasure. I've really enjoyed having the lives because I get to kind of talk to you all in real time. And I hope you all enjoyed it. And I'm just going to check one more time. Oh, and Kathy says, I actually bought a flexible fabric glue. Yes, you can do that too. Definitely. And then Claire asked about coated paper clips for the pins. I would just use plastic. So plastic will not do anything to naturally dyed yarn. So I would use the plastic. And then let me see any other questions. Yay. Thank you again so much. It's been such a pleasure. I hope that you will join me in the future for classes. And oh, one thing I did actually want to show you. I actually have, let me transition this. I actually have a shawl pin for this, and a couple of you, or more than a couple of you, actually asked me about this pin because it was in the kits for the from Longmont Yarn Shop, and not everybody got one of these. It's now up on my site, and you can actually get it in sterling, nickel, or copper. So this is how it works. This creates a little bit of a spring here and keeps it clipped. So this is a one-piece pin, and you can't lose a part of it. So that's up on my site, designsbyromi.com, if you were one of the people who wanted to grab one of those, but you didn't get one. So thank you again. Let me just one more check. Okay, good. No more questions. Thank you again. Take care, and I hope to see you again very soon. Bye bye.